Chapter 1. The Chamber's Secret. The flickering candlelight cast long shadows across the towering bookshelves of Hogwarts Library. In the furthest corner, punched over a tome of ancient wizarding genealogies, sat a solitary figure. His dark hair fell in waves over a furrowed brow, and his fingers, stained with ink, traced the lines of text with feverish intensity.
It must be here, somewhere.
Tom Riddle's whisper barely disturbed the dust motes dancing in the air. His eyes, dark as obsidian, darted across the yellowed pages, searching for any mention of Salazar Slytherin's descendants. The clock tower chimed midnight, but Tom paid it no heed. Time held no meaning when measured against the weight of his quest.
Mr. Riddle, the library closed an hour ago.
The librarian's voice cut through the silence, sharp as a knife. Tom's head snapped up, his features instantly rearranging into a mask of contrition.
My sincerest apologies, Madam Pince. I lost track of time. This research for Professor Binns' essay is simply captivating.
His voice dripped with charm, a honeyed tone that belied the cold calculation behind his eyes. Madam Pince's stern expression softened almost imperceptibly.
Well, I suppose I can allow you a few more minutes, but do hurry along, Mr. Riddle. Even prefects must abide by the rules.
Of course, Madam Pince. You're too kind.
As the librarian's footsteps faded, Tom's facade crumbled. His lips curled into a sneer, contempt etched into every line of his face. He turned back to the book, fingers clenching the edges with renewed fervor.
Fools, the lot of them. They have no idea of the power that courses through my veins.
He slammed the book shut, frustration radiating from his taut frame. Another dead end, another night wasted. He rose, gathering his materials with practiced efficiency. As he made his way through the labyrinthine shelves, a title caught his eye, Secrets of the Darkest Art. Without hesitation, he plucked it from its resting place, concealing it within his robes. The corridors of Hogwarts were eerily silent as Tom made his way back to the Slytherin common room. The torches lining the walls cast dancing shadows, and Tom couldn't shake the feeling that the very stones of the castle were watching him, judging his every move.
Tom, my boy, what are you doing out at this hour?
Professor Slughorn emerged from the shadows, his rotund figure illuminated by the soft glow of his wand. Tom's mind raced, calculating his next move with the precision of a master chess player.
Professor Slughorn, I'm glad I ran into you. I was just finishing up some extra research in the library and, well, I came across a fascinating concept I was hoping to discuss with you.
Slughorn's eyes lit up with interest, his vanity easily stoked by Tom's carefully crafted words.
Oh, and what might that be, Tom?
I was reading about the founders of Hogwarts, sir. Specifically, about Salazar Slytherin. I couldn't help but wonder, do you think his bloodline still exists today?
Slughorn's brow furrowed, a mix of curiosity and caution warring across his features.
That's quite a loaded question, Tom. The pureblood families do take great pride in tracing their lineages, but Slytherin's line, well, that's a matter of much debate.
But surely, sir, with your connections in knowledge, you must have some insight.
Flattery colored Tom's words, and Slughorn preened under the attention. He leaned in conspiratorially, his voice dropping to a whisper.
Well, between you and me, Tom, there have been rumors, whispers of a chamber that Slytherin himself built within the castle. A chamber of secrets, they call it. But it's all speculation, of course. No one's ever found proof of its existence.
Tom's heart raced, but he kept his expression neutral, merely nodding with feigned academic interest.
A chamber of secrets? How intriguing. And what secrets might it hold, I wonder?
Now, Tom, best not to dwell on such things. It's late, and you should be getting to bed. We wouldn't want our star student falling asleep in class, would we?
Of course not, Professor. Thank you for indulging my curiosity. Good night.
As Slughorn waddled away, Tom's mask slipped once more. A triumphant gleam shone in his eyes, and a smile that held no warmth curved his lips.
A chamber of secrets. Finally, a lead worth pursuing.
He whispered the password to the Slytherin common room, the stone walls sliding open to admit him. As he entered, the green-tinged light of the underwater windows cast an otherworldly glow upon his features. In that moment, Tom Riddle looked less like a student and more like a predator, poised on the brink of a great and terrible discovery. The common room was deserted at this late hour, the embers in the fireplace casting a dim, flickering light across the ornate furnishings. Tom made his way to a secluded corner, his footsteps muffled by the plush emerald carpet. He sank into a high-backed chair, its serpentine engravings seeming to writhe in the low light. With trembling hands, he withdrew the book he had pilfered from the library. Secrets of the Darkest Art gleamed in tarnished silver on its leather cover. Tom's fingers caressed the spine, a shiver of anticipation running through him.
At last, the key to unlocking my true potential.
He opened the book, its pages crackling with age and forbidden knowledge. As he delved deeper into its contents, his eyes widened, drinking in every word, every dark incantation. Hours passed unnoticed as Tom lost himself in the arcane text. The first rays of dawn were creeping across the lake when Tom finally closed the book. His mind reeled with newfound knowledge, dark and intoxicated. He knew he should feel revulsion at some of the acts described within its pages, but all he felt was a burning curiosity, a desire to push the boundaries of magic further than anyone had before. As the rest of Slytherin House began to stir, Tom quickly concealed the book in his robes. He made his way to the dormitory, his mind already formulating plans. He would need to be careful to cultivate the right relationships, to present the perfect facade of the model student while he pursued his true goal. In the privacy of his four-poster bed, Tom pulled out a small leather-bound diary. He opened it to a blank page and began to write, his quills scratching across the parchment with furious intensity.
The Chamber of Secrets is real, and I, the heir of Slytherin, will find it, no matter the cost.
As he closed the diary, a flicker of red flushed in Tom's eyes, there and gone in an instant. The transformation had begun, and Tom Riddle was one step closer to becoming the Dark Lord he was destined to be. Chapter 2. The Heir's Quest. The Slytherin common room lay shrouded in an eerie silence, broken only by the occasional crackle of dying embers in the ornate fireplace. Tom Riddle hunched over a massive tome, its pages yellowed with age, his eyes darting feverishly across the text. A prefect badge on his robes glinted dully in the dim light, a reminder of responsibilities long neglected.
Tom? It's past midnight. We were supposed to patrol an hour ago.
Abraxas Malfoy's voice cut through the stillness, laced with a mixture of concern and irritation. Tom's head snapped up, his gaze cold and piercing.
Your timing is most inopportune, Abraxas. Can you not see I'm occupied with matters of far greater significance?
Abraxas flinched, taken aback by the venom in Tom's tone. The charismatic leader who had once commanded their unwavering loyalty seemed a distant memory, replaced by this obsessed, hollow-eyed stranger.
But the professors.
The professors are of no consequence. Leave, now.
The dismissal hung in the air, heavy and final. Abraxas retreated, casting one last worried glance over his shoulder before disappearing through the stone archway. Tom returned to his book, the encounter already forgotten. Hours melted away, marked only by the steady drip of wax from guttering candles and the occasional rustle of parchment. As the first weak rays of dawn began to filter through the murky waters of the lake, Tom's eyes widened, a triumphant gleam replacing their usual coldness.
At last?
His voice, barely above a whisper, held a note of reverence as he read aloud from the crumbling text before him.
And Salazar Slytherin, greatest of the Hogwarts Four, left behind a chamber of secrets, wherein lies a monster that only his true heir may control.
The words seemed to hang in the air, pregnant with possibility. Tom's mind raced, connections forming and reforming like strands of a complex web. His ability to speak to snakes, long kept secret, suddenly took on new significance.
Parselton, the key to it all.
A slow, cruel smile spread across Tom's face, transforming his handsome features into something altogether more sinister. He closed the book with a decisive snap, rising from his chair with newfound purpose. As he made his way towards the dormitory, his gait smooth and predatory, Tom's thoughts turned to the future. The monster in the chamber, waiting to be awakened, the power it represented, and he, Tom Marvolo Riddle, the only one worthy to wield it.
Destiny calls, and I shall answer.
The words were spoken softly, but with absolute conviction. In that moment, surrounded by the trappings of his Slytherin heritage, Tom Riddle took another step towards the darkness that would one day consume him entirely. The following days saw a marked change in Tom's behavior. His usual mask of charm and politeness slipped more frequently, revealing glimpses of the obsession that consumed him. In potions class, Professor Slughorn's jovial attempts at conversation were met with distracted nods and monosyllabic responses.
Tom, my boy, that draught of living death is coming along splendidly. I dare say you've outdone yourself this time.
Tom's eyes, previously fixed on the simmering cauldron before him, flickered up to meet Slughorn's. For a moment, something cold and calculating flashed in their depths.
Thank you, Professor. I find that dedication yields results in all endeavors.
Slughorn's smile faltered slightly, a flicker of unease crossing his features, before he moved on to the next student. Tom returned his attention to the potion, his mind already racing ahead to the research that awaited him in the library. Later that evening, Tom stood before a full-length mirror in the prefect's bathroom, his reflection wavering in the steam-filled air. He closed his eyes, concentrating fiercely, and when he spoke, it was in a series of sibilant hisses.
Open, reveal your secrets.
His eyes snapped open, a mixture of triumph and frustration warring on his face. The Parseltongue came more easily now with practice, but it was not enough, not yet. In the library, Madame Pince's suspicious gaze followed Tom as he moved through the stacks, pulling down tome after ancient tome. His fingers, stained with ink and parchment dust, trembled slightly with suppressed excitement as he pored over accounts of Salazar Slytherin's life and works. It was there, hidden in the depths of a particularly obscure text, that Tom found the reference that would change everything.
A beast of legend, eyes that kill with a glance, fangs dripping with venom. Only the true heir of Slytherin may command it.
His heart raced, blood pounding in his ears. This was it, the monster in the chamber, the key to unlocking his destiny. As Tom made his way back to the Slytherin dormitories that night, his mind whirled with possibilities. The power that lay dormant beneath the castle, waiting for him to claim. A legacy of Salazar Slytherin, his birthright. In the privacy of his four-poster bed, Tom pulled out the small, leather-bound diary that had become his constant companion. His quills scratched across the parchment, recording his thoughts and plans with feverish intensity.
I am the heir of Slytherin. The chamber will open at my command, and the beast within will purge this school of the unworthy. It is my destiny, my purpose, and I will let nothing stand in my way.
As he closed the diary, a flicker of red flashed in Tom's eyes, there and gone in an instant. Chapter 3, Whispers in the Walls. The torchlight flickered, casting eerie shadows along the stone walls of the dungeon corridor. Tom Riddle moved with silent purpose, his dark eyes scanning every crevice and corner. A faint hissing sound caught his attention, and he paused, tilting his head to listen.
Come out, little one. I mean you no harm.
His words emerged as a sibilant whisper, the language of serpents flowing effortlessly from his lips. A small adder slithered from behind a loose stone, its scales glinting in the dim light.
Speak, you seek knowledge?
Yes, tell me of the hidden places within these walls, the secrets that lie dormant, waiting to be awakened.
The snake's tongue flicked out, tasting the air around Tom. Its beady eyes seemed to bore into him, assessing.
Many passages, twisting and turning. Some lead nowhere. Others to danger.
I fear no danger. Show me.
For hours, Tom followed the adder's guidance, mapping previously unknown corridors and chambers in his mind. His fingers traced along damp stone, searching for hidden mechanisms or magical triggers. Yet each promising lead ended in frustration, empty rooms, collapsed tunnels, or mundane storage spaces.
There must be more. The chamber cannot be this well hidden.
Perhaps the entrance lies elsewhere. Not all secrets dwell in darkness.
Tom's brow furrowed, considering the serpent's words. He glanced at his watch, realizing with a start that dawn was approaching. He had spent the entire night exploring, and his first class of the day, Transfiguration with Dumbledore, was in mere hours.
I must go, but I will return. There is still much to uncover.
As Tom hurried back to the Slytherin common room, his mind raced with possibilities. He barely noticed the concerned looks from his housemates as he rushed to gather his books and parchment.
Tom, you look unwell. Did you sleep at all?
I'm fine, Abraxas. Just lost track of time studying.
The lie came easily, but Tom could see the doubt in Abraxas' eyes. He brushed past his follower, unwilling to waste time on explanations. In Transfiguration, Tom struggled to focus. His usual precise one-work was sloppy, and his attempts at turning a teapot into a tortoise resulted in a misshapen, porcelain-shelled creature that continued to whistle steam.
Mr. Riddle, this is quite unlike your usual standard of work. Is everything all right?
Dumbledore's piercing blue eyes seemed to see right through Tom's carefully constructed facade. Tom forced a polite smile, even as irritation bubbled beneath the surface.
My apologies, Professor. I fear I may be coming down with something. It won't happen again.
As the days passed, Tom's academic performance continued to slip. His essays grew shorter, his practical demonstrations less impressive, but he couldn't bring himself to care. Every free moment was devoted to his search, communicating with any serpent he could find within the castle wall.
Tom, my boy, I must say I'm growing concerned. Your last potions essay was, well, frankly, it was barely acceptable. This isn't like you at all.
Tom's fingers tightened around his quill, fighting to keep his expression neutral. He couldn't afford suspicion, not when he was so close to uncovering the truth.
I apologize, Professor. I've been distracted lately. Family matters, you understand. It won't happen again.
Of course, of course. Just remember, Tom, you have a bright future ahead of you. Don't let anything jeopardize that.
As Slughorn waddled away, Tom's mask slipped for a moment, revealing a flash of cold anger. They couldn't understand. His destiny was far greater than any academic accolade. He would find the chamber, claim his birthright, and show them all the true meaning of power.
Soon. Very soon.
The whisper was barely audible, but in the empty classroom, it seemed to echo with the weight of prophecy. Chapter 4. The girls' bathroom. The corridors of Hogwarts bustled with activity as students rushed between classes. Tom Riddle moved through the crowd with practiced ease, his prefect badge gleaming on his chest. His dark eyes scanned the faces around him, searching for any sign of useful information.
Excuse me.
He shouldered past a group of giggling Hufflepuffs, his lip curling in disdain. As he rounded the corner, a high-pitched whine caught his attention.
It's not fair. Why won't anyone fix it?
Oh, stop your blubbering, Myrtle. It's just a bathroom.
But it's been out of order for weeks, and it's right there on the second floor where everyone can see.
Tom froze, his keen mind latching onto the conversation. He pressed himself against the wall, straining to hear more.
Who cares about some grotty old bathroom? There are plenty of others.
You don't understand. It's weird in there. Sometimes I hear things.
Things? What sort of things?
I count noises, like hissing.
Tom's heart began to race. Pissing, could it be? He'd searched every inch of the castle, or so he'd thought, but a girl's bathroom. It was so obvious, yet so brilliantly hidden.
Hissing? You're mental, you are. Come on, we'll be late for charms.
The girl's footsteps faded away, leaving Tom alone with his thought. He leaned against the cool stone wall, his mind whirling with possibilities.
The second floor.
He muttered to himself, picturing the layout of the castle in his mind. It was centrally located, easily accessible, yet often overlooked. A perfect hiding place for Salazar's greatest secret. His excitement faltered as reality set in. How could he, a male student, investigate a girl's bathroom without raising suspicion? Even with his prefect status, it would be a risky endeavor. Tom began to pace, his footsteps echoing in the empty corridor. On one hand, this could be the breakthrough he'd been searching for, the key to unlocking his true heritage and power. But on the other,
if I'm caught,
the consequences would be severe. Suspension, expulsion, even. All his carefully laid plans, his cultivated image, shattered in an instant. He clenched his fists, frustration building within him. To be so close, yet held back by something as trivial as social convention. It was maddening.
There must be a way.
His mind raced through possibilities. Polyjuice potion, too time-consuming and risky to brew. Disillusionment charm. Not foolproof, and he hadn't mastered it yet. Perhaps he could convince a female student to investigate for. No, too many variables. Too much chance of exposure. Tom's pacing grew more frantic, his usually composed demeanor cracking under the weight of indecision. He ran a hand through his dark hair, mussing its perfect arrangement.
I can't let this opportunity slip away. I've come too far, sacrificed too much.
Images flashed through his mind. The orphanage, the years of isolation and ridicule. The moment he learned of his wizarding heritage, the thrill of power it brought. And now, the tantalizing promise of his true destiny as Slytherin's heir.
No, I won't be denied, not when I'm this close.
His resolve hardened, crystallizing into a cold determination. He would find a way into that bathroom. Consequences be damned. The risk was great, but the potential reward, it was beyond measure.
I'll do whatever it takes. The chamber will be mine.
With a final steadying breath, Tom smoothed his hair and straightened his robes. The mask of the perfect student slid back into place, hiding the turmoil beneath. He set off down the corridor, his mind already formulating plans. The die was cast. Tom Riddle had made his choice, and Hogwarts would never be the same. Chapter 5. The Chamber Revealed. The moonlight cast eerie shadows across the stone corridors of Hogwarts as Tom Riddle crept towards his destination. His footsteps, muffled by a silencing charm, echoed only in his mind. The castle slumbered, unaware of the momentous events about to unfold within its ancient walls.
Lumos Maxima.
A soft glow emanated from his wand tip, illuminating the weathered oak door before him. The brass plaque, tarnished with age, bore the unmistakable silhouette of a witch. Tom's heart thundered in his chest, a primal rhythm that seemed to reverberate through the empty hallway.
This is it. No turning back now.
His fingers, pale and slender, curled around the door handle. With a deep breath, he pushed. The hinges creaked, a sound that seemed to pierce the night like a banshee's wail. Tom winced, his body tensing as he waited for the inevitable cry of alarm. But none came. The bathroom lay before him, a realm of shadows and secrets. Moonlight filtered through grimy windows, casting a ghostly pall over the cracked sinks and chipped tiles. Tom's gaze darted from corner to corner, searching for any sign of movement, any hint of the chamber's entrance.
Where are you hiding?
His whisper hung in the air, unanswered. Frustration gnawed at him as he moved deeper into the room, his wand held high. The flickering wand light danced across the tarnished mirrors, creating grotesque reflections that seemed to mock his efforts. And then he saw it. A glint of metal caught his eye, drawing him towards one of the sinks. Tom leaned closer, his breath fogging the grimy porcelain. There, etched into the copper tap, was a tiny snake.
Of course. How fitting.
A smile, cold and triumphant, curved his lips. He straightened, his eyes never leaving the serpentine engraving. The words came to him unbidden, a sibilant hiss that seemed to chill the very air around him.
Open to me, Chamber of Secrets.
For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, with a grinding of stone on stone, the sink began to move. It sank, slowly at first, then with increasing speed, revealing a gaping pipe wide enough for a man to slide into. The stench of decay and stagnant water wafted up from the depths, but to Tom, it was the sweetest perfume.
At last, after all this time.
Without hesitation, he swung his legs over the edge of the pipe. The unknown beckoned, dark and dangerous. Tom's eyes gleamed with an almost feverish light as he pushed off, plunging into the abyss. The world became a blur of twists and turns, the slimy walls of the pipe rushing past him at dizzying speed. Tom's robes billowed around him as he hurtled downward, deeper and deeper beneath the skull. The air grew colder, heavy with the weight of centuries. Just when it seemed the descent would never end, the pipe leveled out. Tom shot out of the opening, landing with a wet thud on the damp floor of a dark stone tunnel. He rose, brushing off his robes with a look of distaste.
Lumos Maxima, reveal your secrets to me.
The tunnel burst into stark relief, revealing walls coated with slime and littered with small animal bones. Tom's lips curled in a sneer as he picked his way forward, his footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. The tunnel seemed to stretch on endlessly, twisting and turning like the coils of a great serpent. Tom's excitement grew with each step, a palpable energy that crackled around him like static electricity. And then he saw it. The tunnel opened up into a vast chamber, so large that his wand light couldn't penetrate its farthest reaches. Towering stone pillars rose from the gloom, entwined with carved serpents that seemed to writhe in the flickering light.
What a sight to behold, magnificent beyond words.
His voice, barely above a whisper, was swallowed by the oppressive silence. Tom moved forward, his eyes drinking in every detail. The floor was smooth black stone, reflecting the eerie green light that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves. At the far end of the chamber, between the two tallest pillars, stood a colossal statue. Its ancient, monkeyish face loomed over the chamber, its stone eyes seeming to follow Tom as he approached.
Salazar Slytherin, my ancestor, my legacy.
Tom's voice swelled with pride and reverence. He stood before the statue, a dark silhouette against its massive form. In that moment, he felt the weight of destiny settling upon his shoulders.
I am here, I have found you, and now, together, we shall cleanse this school of the unworthy.
His words echoed through the chamber, a solemn vow that seemed to awaken something ancient and terrible. As if, in response, a low rumble emanated from deep within the statue's base.
Yes, come to me, Slytherin's monster. Your heir commands you.
The rumble grew louder, accompanied by the sound of stone grinding against stone. Tom's heart raced, his body thrumming with anticipation. He raised his wand, ready to face whatever emerged. Chapter 6. The Era Ascends. The cavernous chamber stretched before Tom Riddle, a vast expanse of shadow and stone. Flickering torchlight danced across serpentine pillars, casting writhing shadows that seemed to whisper ancient secrets. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp stone and forgotten magic.
At last, the Chamber of Secrets.
Tom's fingers traced the cold stone of a nearby pillar, feeling the thrum of ancient magic beneath his touch. A shiver of excitement raced down his spine as he moved deeper into the chamber, footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. Intricate carvings adorned the walls, depicting scenes of serpents and sorcery. At the far end, a colossal statue of Salazar Slytherin loomed, its stone eyes seeming to follow Tom's every move.
I can feel your power, Salazar. Show me what you've hidden all these years.
As if in response, a faint hissing emanated from the statue's base. Tom froze, his heart thundering in his chest. The hissing grew louder, more insistent. Without conscious thought, words formed on his lips, the sibilant sounds of Parseltum spilling forth.
Great Slytherin, I am your heir. Reveal to me your greatest creation.
The chamber trembled, stone ground against stone, as the mouth of Salazar's statue began to open. Tom stumbled back, wand raised defensively. From the gaping maw, something massive began to emerge.
By Merlin's beard.
A colossal serpent slithered forth, scales gleaming in the wand light. Its body was thick as an oak tree, stretching endlessly from the statue's mouth. Tom's breath caught in his throat as he beheld the basilisk in all its terrifying glory.
Who awakens me from my slumber? Who dares to enter the Chamber of Secrets?
Tom's eyes flew open in shock, meeting the basilisk's gaze. To his astonishment, he remained unpetrified. A wild, triumphant laugh bubbled up from his chest.
I am Tom Marvolo Riddle, heir of Slytherin, and you, magnificent creature, are under my command.
The basilisk regarded him silently for a moment, its ancient eyes unblinking. Then, slowly, it lowered its massive head in a gesture of submission.
I recognize the blood of my master. What is your bidding, heir of Slytherin?
A slow smile spread across Tom's face, cold and calculating. Power thrummed through his veins, intoxicating in its intensity. He raised a hand, marveling, as the basilisk leaned into his touch.
Together we shall cleanse this school. Salazar's noble work will be completed at last.
The basilisk hissed in agreement, its forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. Tom's mind raced with possibilities, plans forming and discarding themselves in rapid succession.
Tell me, Great Serpent, how long have you slumbered here?
Centuries upon centuries, young heir. I have waited for one worthy to command me.
Tom's eyes gleamed with dark ambition. He began to pace, gesticulating as he spoke.
The Mudbloods have infested Hogwarts for far too long. With your power, we shall purge them from these hallowed halls.
The basilisk coiled around itself, watching Tom with ancient, unfathomable eyes.
Be warned, young heir. The path you seek is treacherous. Many have tried to wield my power and failed.
I am not like the others. I am the true heir of Slytherin, and I will succeed where they faltered.
Tom's voice rang with conviction, echoing through the chamber. He turned, facing the statue of Salazar Slytherin, his posture mirroring that of his ancestor.
I swear on my magic and my blood, I will finish what Salazar started. Hogwarts will be purified, no matter the cost.
The air seemed to thicken with the weight of Tom's oath. Magic swirled around him, acknowledging the power of his words. The basilisk hissed in approval, its massive body shifting restlessly.
How do you intend to begin, young master?
Tom's lips curled into a cruel smile. He began to outline his plan, gesturing animatedly as he spoke.
We must be cautious at first. A few strategic attacks, carefully timed and executed, will sow fear and confusion among the students and staff.
The basilisk listened intently, its ancient wisdom melding with Tom's youthful ambition. As Tom spoke, his voice grew colder, more detached from the humanity he was planning to destroy.
The Mudbloods will be our primary targets, of course, but we mustn't neglect the blood traders who protect them. They're just as guilty, perhaps more so.
And what of Discovery, young heir?
Tom waved a dismissive hand, his confidence bordering on arrogance.
Let them try to uncover our secrets. They'll never suspect a model student like myself. And even if they did, they'd never find this chamber without the gift of Parselton.
He paused, a thoughtful expression crossing his face.
We'll need a scapegoat, of course. Someone to take the fall when the attacks begin. I have a few candidates in mind.
The basilisk's tongue flicked out, tasting Tom's growing darkness on the air. It seemed to approve, its massive body coiling tighter around itself in anticipation.
You play a dangerous game, heir of Slytherin. Are you prepared for the consequences?
Tom's eyes flashed, a hint of red gleaming in their depths for a split second.
Consequences are for the weak. I am Tom Marvolo Riddle, heir of Slytherin and future master of Hogwarts. The world will tremble before me.
His words echoed through the chamber, a declaration of war against the very foundations of Hogwarts. The basilisk hissed in approval, its ancient power harmonizing with Tom's youthful ambition.
Now, my friend, let us plan our first strike. The Chamber of Secrets has been opened, and Hogwarts will never be the same.
As Tom and the basilisk began to plot, the torches in the chamber seemed to dim, as if even the ancient magic of Hogwarts recoiled from the darkness growing within its walls. The heir of Slytherin had ascended, and a new era of terror was about to begin. Chapter 7. A Deadly Test. The Chamber of Secrets lay shrouded in an eerie silence, broken only by the soft hiss of the basilisk as it coiled around the feet of Salazar Slytherin's imposing statue. Tom Riddle stood before the serpentine beast, his eyes gleaming with a newfound purpose.
The time has come, mighty heir of Slytherin. We must prove our might to the unworthy who dwell above.
His voice, once filled with boyish charm, now carried an undercurrent of malevolence that seemed to chill the very air around him. The basilisk's tongue flicked out, tasting the anticipation that hung heavy in the chamber.
But how shall we choose our first victim? It must be someone expendable.
Tom's fingers traced the rough-hewn stone of the chamber walls as he paced, his mind racing with possibilities. The basilisk's yellow eyes followed his every move, awaiting its master's command.
Perhaps fate will deliver the perfect candidate to us.
As if in answer to his dark musings, a faint echo reached their ears, the sound of footsteps, and a girl's voice, muffled but discernible, emanating from somewhere above.
Ah, it seems our prey approaches. Let us ascend and see who fortune has chosen for us.
With a series of sibilant commands, Tom directed the basilisk towards the entrance pipe. The massive serpent slithered upwards with surprising agility, its scales scraping against the metal as it climbed. Tom followed, his heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and trepidation.
Remember, great serpent, at my signal, you shall unleash your deadly gaze, but not before we must savor this moment.
They emerged into the second-floor girls' lavatory, the basilisk's bulk barely fitting through the opening of the sink. Tom's keen ears picked up the sound of sniffling coming from one of the stalls.
Stupid Olive Hornby. I'll show her.
A cruel smile played across Tom's lips as he recognized the voice of Myrtle Warren.
How fitting, a mudblood outcast, unwanted and unmourned, the perfect sacrifice to herald our reign.
He positioned himself behind the sink, out of sight of the stall door. The basilisk coiled, ready to strike.
Now, Ancient One, let your gaze fall upon our chosen victim.
The stall door creaked open, and Myrtle stepped out, her eyes red and puffy from crying. She froze, her gaze locking with the basilisk's deadly yellow orbs.
What's that? I don't.
Her words were cut short as the basilisk's gaze took effect. Myrtle's body went rigid, her eyes wide with terror. Then, like a marionette with its strings cut, she crumpled to the floor.
Magnificent, it's done.
Tom stepped out from his hiding place, surveying the scene with cold detachment. He knelt beside Myrtle's lifeless form, studying the fear etched upon her face with scientific curiosity.
You should feel honored, Myrtle Warren. Your death marks the beginning of a new era at Hogwarts.
He rose, brushing off his robes, as if to remove any trace of the girl's existence from his person. The basilisk awaited his next command, its massive head swaying slightly.
Return to the chamber, Great Serpent. We've accomplished what we set out to do.
As the basilisk retreated, Tom cast one last glance at Myrtle's body. A flicker of something, perhaps regret, or the last vestige of his humanity, passed across his features, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by a mask of grim determination.
And so it begins.
He descended back into the chamber, leaving behind the evidence of his first kill. The torches flared to life as he entered, casting long shadows across the cavernous space. Tom strode toward Slytherin's statue, his posture regal, his chin lifted in defiance of the very foundations of morality he had just shattered.
Salazar Slytherin, your heir has risen. The chamber is opened, the monster unleashed. Your noble work will continue through me.
His words reverberated through the chamber, a dark promise echoing through centuries of secrecy and ambition. Tom Riddle stood tall, his shadow stretching behind him like a cloak of darkness. In that moment, the boy who had entered Hogwarts as an orphan with an extraordinary gift began to fade away, giving birth to something far more terrifying.
Tom Riddle is no more. I am Lord Voldemort, heir of Slytherin, and Hogwarts shall tremble before me.
Don't forget to subscribe if you want more chapters.